Once upon a time, there lived a slim maiden named Nenna. Nenna had spent most of her life in the shadow of other women's beauty. In Awo, the small but vibrant village nestled between two rolling hills, beauty wasn't just admired, it was a currency. The women of the village were known far and wide for their curves, especially their large, rounded buttocks, which were said to be a blessing from the goddess Ani herself. A woman's worth was tied to her figure, and in a place where fertility and prosperity were everything, Nenna's slender form made her stand out, but not in a way she ever wanted. From the time she could walk, she learned that the curve of her body, particularly the lack of it, was a source of endless jokes. Children snickered behind her back, and even the elders gave her pitying looks as if she were a flower struggling to bloom, but fated to wilt instead. It wasn't just her peers that reminded her of her difference, but her own mother, Adaku, who would sigh whenever she glanced at Nenna, her lips forming the same tired words. "Ah, Nenna, it's as if Ani forgot you." In a place where beauty equaled opportunity, Nenna had few. By the age of 17, when other girls were preparing for marriage, securing suitors with their wide hips and ample backsides, Nenna was helping her mother in their small yam field, barely noticed by the village boys. She had learned to grow silent, to hide the bitterness that tried to creep up her throat every time she saw a younger girl getting betrothed, carrying baskets of gifts from suitors who had chosen them over her. Still, no matter how much she tried to bury it, the sting of rejection never truly dulled. But the worst of them all was Ifeoma. Ifeoma had been the village beauty since she was a girl, her figure the epitome of what Awo held dear. She was full where Nenna was thin, curvaceous where Nenna was straight. She seemed to glide through the world with a grace that made people stop and stare. Men sought her out, women envied her. Ifeoma was the embodiment of Ani's favor, and she knew it. It wasn't enough that Ifeoma was beautiful. She relished the power it gave her. From the way she walked through the village marketplace to the haughty tone she used with those who didn't meet her standards, Ifeoma always made it clear that she was the queen of Awo, and nothing pleased her more than reminding Nenna of how little she was in comparison. "Nenna!" Ifeoma would call out, her voice loud enough for everyone around to hear. "Did Ani send you back to us too early? It looks like she forgot to finish you." The women standing around would burst into laughter, and even the men, unable to resist the charms of Ifeoma, would chuckle or look away uncomfortably. Nenna would bite her lip, her hands trembling as she tried to hold onto the basket of yams she was carrying, feeling as if every eye in the village was boring into her with pity or scorn. One afternoon, just weeks before the annual Unkwa festival, the largest and most important celebration in the village, Ifeoma took her cruelty to a new level. The Unkwa festival was a time to honor the goddess Ani, to give thanks for fertility and harvest. It was also a time when the women of the village were adorned in their finest attire, competing, though no one would admit it, to show off their beauty in front of the men, who judged silently but thoroughly. The festival always made Nenna anxious, for it was the one event where her differences seemed magnified. Nenna was sitting by the edge of the river, her feet dangling in the cool water, letting the silence of the forest ease her troubled mind. She often came to this spot when she needed to escape the village's whispers, when the weight of Ifeoma's taunts became too much. But today, even the peaceful trickle of water couldn't calm her. She heard the familiar sound of laughter before she saw them. Ifeoma and her friends, a group of the village's most beautiful and envied women, all adorned in their festival garments, preparing early for the celebration. The sight of their colorful wrappers tied tightly around their full hips made Nenna's chest tighten. She tried to slip away before they saw her, but it was too late. "Well, well, what do we have here?" Ifeoma's voice rang out, dripping with mockery. "Is the little twig hiding again?" Nenna stiffened but didn't turn around. She knew better than to engage. Ifeoma thrived on reaction, and Nenna had long learned that staying silent, as much as it burned her, was the only way to survive these moments. Ifeoma and her friends sauntered closer, their laughter bubbling up as if they were sharing a private joke. Nena kept her gaze on the river, willing herself to ignore them, but Ifeoma wasn't one to be ignored. "Oh, don't be like that, Nena," Ifeoma said, her voice now sickly sweet. "You know the festival's coming soon. I'm sure all the men will be looking for someone, well, more fitting to celebrate Ani's blessings with. But you'll be there, won't you? Sitting in the corner trying to disappear, as always." The women around her laughed. Nena's hands balled into fists, her nails digging into her palms as she fought the tears that threatened to spill. It was always the same. No matter what she did, no matter how much she tried to stay out of Ifeoma's way, it was as if her mere existence was an offense to the village's beauty. "Maybe we should help her," Ifeoma continued, her tone feigning concern now. "After all, it's not her fault the goddess Ani didn't bless her like the rest of us." She turned to the other women, her eyes gleaming with wicked delight. "What do you think, girls? Should we help her look more appropriate for the festival?" Nena stood abruptly, her heart pounding. "I don't need your help," she said, her voice trembling but firm. Ifeoma's smile faltered for just a moment before it widened again, more dangerous this time. "Oh, you don't?" she said, stepping closer, her height and presence towering over Nena's smaller frame. "But you're such a charity case, Nena. How could you possibly manage without a little help?" Nena opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, Ifeoma reached out and grabbed the edge of Nena's wrapper, pulling it tight against her waist. "Maybe if we tie this a bit higher," Ifeoma mused, yanking the fabric, "we can create the illusion of a shape. After all, illusions are all you have." The women howled with laughter, and Nena's face burned with humiliation. She wanted to scream, to push Ifeoma away, to fight back, but she knew it would only make things worse. Ifeoma was the queen of Awo, and to challenge her would be to challenge the very ideals of the village. With a final tug, Ifeoma let go, stepping back and admiring her handiwork. "There," she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "Much better. Now you'll fit right in at the festival. Just don't stand too close to me, or people might forget who the real beauty is." Nena swallowed hard, her throat tight as she fought to hold back the tears. She couldn't let Ifeoma see her cry. Not again. She turned and walked away, her legs shaky, but determined to put as much distance between herself and the group of women as possible. As she made her way back toward the village, she felt the weight of Ifeoma's words pressing down on her like a heavy stone. No matter what she did, she would never be enough. Not in this village. Not with these people. Ifeoma's beauty was like a shield, protecting her from any real vulnerability, while Nena's lack of it left her exposed to all the cruelties the world had to offer. But as she reached the outskirts of the village, something shifted in her. The weight that had been pressing down on her began to lift, replaced by a strange, simmering anger. It wasn't fair. None of this was fair. Why should she have to endure this just because she didn't look like the others? Why should Ifeoma get to decide what made someone worthy? Her mother's words came back to her, echoing in her mind. "It's as if Ani forgot you." But what if that wasn't true? What if there was more to this curse, or blessing as some saw it, than anyone in the village knew? What if her difference wasn't a flaw, but a sign of something else entirely? The thought filled her with a sudden, wild determination. Ifeoma might rule over the village with her beauty and her biting words, but Nena wasn't going to let that define her anymore. There had to be a way to break free from this invisible cage, to find a power of her own. And if the village's ideals of beauty wouldn't bend, then maybe she'd have to break them herself. She knew what she had to do. Later that night, Nena sat beside the fire in her mother's hut, the flickering flames casting shadows on the walls. Her mother, Adaku, sat across from her, weaving a basket, her hands moving methodically, her face creased with age and weariness. "Mother," Nena began, her voice soft but steady, "do you really believe Ani forgot me?" Adaku's hands paused and she looked up, her eyes studying her daughter's face carefully. For a moment the room was silent except for the crackling of the fire. "I have told you before, Nena," her mother said slowly. "The goddess Ani blessed this village long ago. The women's figures are a sign of her favor. I do not know why she did not bless you the same way." Nena clenched her fists in her lap. "But what if it wasn't a curse? What if there's something else? Something more?" Her mother sighed, setting the basket aside. "Nena, you are not cursed, but you are different. And in this village, that difference is hard to bear. The world sees you as incomplete, and perhaps in some ways, they are right." Nena's heart tightened at her mother's words, but she didn't back down. "What if I could find out why? What if I could speak to Ani myself?" Adaku's eyes widened, her brow furrowing in concern. "Do not speak such things, child. The sacred forest is no place for someone like you. The goddess does not answer every plea, and to seek her out is dangerous." "But I have to know," Nena insisted, her voice trembling with determination. "I have to understand why I am the way I am. I can't live like this forever, Mother. If I don't find answers, I'll never be free." Her mother stared at her for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally she spoke, her voice low and filled with warning. "If you go to the sacred forest, there is no guarantee you will return. And if you do return, Nena, you may not be the same." "I don't care," Nena replied, her jaw set. "I'm willing to take that risk." Adaku sighed deeply, her shoulders slumping in resignation. "Then go, if you must. But know this, Nena. You may not like the answers you find." Nena nodded, her heart racing with both fear and anticipation. She didn't know what awaited her in the sacred forest, but she knew one thing for certain. She couldn't continue living in the shadow of Ifeoma's cruelty and the village's narrow expectations. It was time to find her own path. As the fire crackled and the night deepened, Nena made her decision. She would go to the sacred forest, and she would seek out the goddess Ani. Only then could she truly understand her place in the world. The next morning, Nena woke before the sun had fully risen, the village still quiet and shrouded in mist. She packed a small satchel with essentials, some dried yam, a gourd of water, and a small charm her mother had given her as a child, said to offer protection against the unseen spirits of the forest. Stepping outside, she glanced back at the hut, her heart heavy. She had lived her whole life in Awo, but now, as she prepared to leave it behind, even for a short while, she felt a pang of uncertainty. Would she return? And if she did, would anything be different? She shook off the doubt, reminding herself why she was doing this. Ifeoma's words still echoed in her mind, but they no longer filled her with shame. Now, they fueled her. This was no longer about beauty or acceptance. This was about reclaiming her identity, about finding her own worth, even if no one else in the village could see it. With a deep breath, Nena set off towards the sacred forest, the path winding through the hills and disappearing into the dense trees beyond. The forest had always been a place of mystery, a place whispered about in stories and legends. It was said that the goddess Ani resided there, watching over the village from her hidden domain. Few ever dared to venture inside, and even fewer returned unchanged. As she walked, Nena's mind raced with questions. What would Ani look like? Would she be the terrifying, all-powerful goddess the stories described, or something else entirely? And most importantly, would she have the answers Nena so desperately sought? The trees grew thicker as she entered the forest, their branches twisting overhead, casting long shadows that danced in the early morning light. The air was cooler here, and the sounds of the village faded behind her, replaced by the soft rustling of leaves and the distant calls of unseen creatures. Nena's heart pounded in her chest as she pressed forward, the path narrowing and becoming more treacherous with each step. But she refused to turn back. She had come too far to give up now. After what felt like hours, she reached a clearing, the trees parting to reveal a small, glistening pond at the center. The water was so clear she could see the pebbles at the bottom, and the air around it was unnaturally still, as if the world itself was holding its breath. This was it. This was where the story said Ani could be found. Nenna stepped closer to the water, her reflection staring back at her from its surface. She had never felt more vulnerable, more exposed. But she also felt a strange sense of anticipation, as if something momentous was about to happen. Closing her eyes, she knelt by the water's edge and whispered a prayer, her voice trembling with both fear and hope. "Goddess Ani," she began, "I come before you to seek your wisdom. I ask you to help me understand why I am the way I am, why I am different from the others. Please, show me the truth." For a long moment, there was nothing but silence. The wind didn't stir, the water remained still, and Nenna's heart sank. Had she made a mistake? Was this all for nothing? But then, just as she was about to rise and leave, the surface of the water rippled, and a soft melodic voice echoed through the clearing. "You seek answers, Nenna, daughter of Adaku," the voice said, and Nenna's eyes flew open in shock. Standing across the pond, bathed in a soft, ethereal glow, was a figure unlike any Nenna had ever seen. It was not the terrifying goddess she had expected, but a woman. Beautiful, yes, but in a way that transcended the village's ideals. She was tall and graceful, with a presence that seemed to radiate both power and gentleness. Her eyes, however, held an ancient wisdom, and Nenna knew immediately that this was Ani, the goddess she had come to find. Ani stepped forward, her bare feet gliding across the water as if it were solid ground. She stopped before Nenna, her gaze piercing, yet kind. "You ask why you are different," Ani said softly. "But have you ever considered that your difference is not a curse but a gift?" Nenna stared up at her, her mind racing. "A gift," she stammered. "But I don't understand. The women of the village, they are all blessed by you. Why wasn't I?" Ani smiled, a small, knowing smile. "The blessings I bestow are not always what they seem, Nenna. The women of your village are beautiful, yes, but beauty can be a double-edged sword. It can be a source of power, but it can also be a source of weakness. Those who rely too heavily on their outward appearance often forget the strength that lies within." She knelt beside Nenna, her voice lowering to a near whisper. "You, Nenna, have been given a different kind of blessing, one that the others cannot see, because they are too blinded by their own reflections. You have been given the strength to find your own path, to define your own worth without needing the validation of others. That is a power greater than any physical beauty." Nenna's heart swelled with a mix of emotions, relief, confusion, and something else she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Could it be true? Could the very thing that had made her feel so small, so invisible, actually be the key to something greater? "But," Nenna hesitated, "if Aoma, the others, they'll never see it that way." Ani's gaze softened, and she placed a gentle hand on Nenna's shoulder. "Perhaps not at first, but true power does not need to be seen to be real. It is enough that you know it, and in time, they will come to understand." As the goddess's words sank in, Nenna felt a weight lift from her shoulders, a burden she hadn't even realized she was carrying. For the first time in her life, she felt as though she could breathe freely, unburdened by the village's expectations or Ifeoma's scorn. Ani stood, her form shimmering as if she were becoming one with the light around her. "Go, Nenna. Return to your village, but know this. Your journey is just beginning. There will be trials ahead, but you have the strength to face them. Trust in yourself, and you will find the power that lies within." Nenna nodded, her heart racing with a new sense of purpose. As Annie's form faded into the light, the clearing returned to its stillness, the water once again calm and serene. But Nena was no longer the same. As she turned to leave the forest, her mind was clear, her resolve stronger than ever. She didn't know what awaited her back in the village, but she knew one thing for certain: she was no longer afraid. The path back to the village seemed different somehow. As Nena walked through the forest, a strange peace settled over her. The birds that sang in the distance, the rustling of the leaves in the gentle wind, it all felt alive in a way she had never noticed before. It was as if Ani's presence still lingered around her, guiding her steps. For the first time, Nena didn't feel invisible. She felt connected. But as the trees began to thin and the familiar rooftops of Awo came into view, a knot of anxiety tightened in her stomach. What Ani had said filled her with hope, but the reality of facing Ifeoma and the others, especially with the festival so close, was still daunting. Would they even notice the change in her? Could they see her for who she truly was, or would she remain a target for their cruelty? The village was bustling with preparations for the Nkwa festival. Colorful fabrics hung from stalls, drums echoed in the distance, and women were busy weaving intricate hairstyles, preparing to flaunt their beauty. As Nena walked past, a few villagers glanced at her, their eyes lingering a moment longer than usual, as if something about her had subtly shifted. But no one spoke to her. No one approached her. And then she saw Ifeoma. She stood near the center of the market, surrounded by her usual group of admirers. Her laughter rang out, high and sharp, as she basked in the attention of the men who gathered around her. Ifeoma's bright wrapper clung to her curves in a way that drew every gaze, and she moved with the confidence of someone who knew they were untouchable. It was as if the very air around her shimmered with her beauty. Nena hesitated, watching from the shadows of a nearby stall. Part of her wanted to turn around, avoid the confrontation that was sure to come, but another part of her, the part Ani had awakened, stood firm. She had faced the goddess. What was one village beauty in comparison? Taking a deep breath, Nena stepped into the light. Ifeoma's eyes found her immediately, narrowing with a flash of irritation. She smiled, but there was something predatory about the way her lips curled, something sharper than before. "Nena?" Ifeoma called, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Back from your little escape? Did you finally find a place where you belong?" The crowd turned to look at Nena, the murmurs already beginning. She forced herself to walk forward, her heart pounding in her chest, but her steps were steady. Ifeoma tilted her head, her eyes scanning Nena from head to toe, as if searching for something to mock. "Ah," Ifeoma said, tapping her chin. "I see no changes, still as plain as ever." The women around Ifeoma giggled, and Nena's stomach churned with anger, but she swallowed it, keeping her voice calm. "I don't need to change," she said quietly, "and I won't let you make me feel small anymore." For a moment there was silence. Ifeoma blinked, taken aback by the boldness in Nena's words, but then she laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. "Oh? You've grown a backbone, I see. How cute. But don't mistake confidence for power, Nena. You are still nothing." Nena clenched her fists. She could feel Ani's words burning in her mind, urging her to speak her truth. "I'm not nothing," she said, her voice rising. "And maybe you're the one who should stop pretending that beauty is the only thing that matters." The crowd stirred uneasily. Ifeoma's face darkened, and for the first time, Nena saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. "Enough!" Ifeoma snapped, her voice harsh now. "You think you can challenge me? Just because you spent a few nights hiding in the forest, you think you can speak to me like that? I am the queen of this village. I am—" "You are afraid," Nena interrupted, her voice steady. "You're afraid that without your looks, you have nothing. That's why you need to keep tearing others down, to make sure no one sees how empty you really are." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even Ifeoma's closest friends looked shocked. Nena had never spoken like this before. No one had ever spoken to Ifeoma like this before. For a long, tense moment, Ifeoma said nothing. She just stared at Nena, her hands trembling slightly as she struggled to keep her composure. Then, without another word, she turned and stormed away, her entourage following close behind, leaving the marketplace buzzing with murmurs of what had just happened. Nena stood frozen, her heart racing, wondering if she had gone too far. But as she watched Ifeoma's retreating form, she felt a strange sense of satisfaction. For the first time, she had stood up for herself. And for the first time, Ifeoma hadn't been able to knock her down. But as Nena turned to leave, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. That evening, as the sky darkened and the villagers lit fires to prepare for the night's festivities, Ifeoma's rage burned hotter than the flames. She paced back and forth in her hut, her mind racing with a mixture of fury and disbelief. How had Nena, a nobody, a plain, insignificant girl, managed to embarrass her like that? How had she found the audacity to speak out? Ifeoma's hands clenched into fists. She had to find a way to put Nena back in her place. If she didn't act quickly, people might start to think Nena's words had merit. They might start questioning Ifeoma's power, and she couldn't let that happen. As her mind churned, she remembered something, an old legend her grandmother had once told her, about a woman who had lost everything, but found a way to restore her power through dark means. There was a woman, a witch, who lived on the outskirts of the village, deep in the forest. People feared her, whispered that she had dealings with spirits and forces no one dared speak of openly. But Ifeoma wasn't afraid, not anymore. She couldn't afford to be. Determined, Ifeoma wrapped a dark cloak around her shoulders and slipped out of her hut, careful to avoid the eyes of the villagers who were gathering for the festival. She moved quickly through the shadows, her heart pounding as she left the safety of the village behind and entered the forest. The deeper she went, the darker and quieter it became. The trees seemed to close in around her, their branches twisted and gnarled like the hands of old crones. The only sound was the soft rustling of leaves under her feet and the occasional distant hoot of an owl. Finally, after what felt like hours, she reached a small clearing where a crooked hut stood, half hidden by overgrown vines and moss. The air was thick with the smell of herbs and something else, something darker. Ifeoma hesitated for a moment, her heart racing, but then she steeled herself. She couldn't afford to be afraid. Not now. She stepped forward and knocked on the door. There was no answer at first. Then, after what felt like an eternity, the door creaked open, revealing a hunched figure with sharp eyes and a face lined with age and wisdom. The witch, Nwanyi, gazed at Ifeoma with a look of mild curiosity, as if she had been expecting her. "I know why you've come," Nwanyi said in a voice that crackled like dry leaves. Ifeoma swallowed hard, but forced herself to speak. "I need power, more than I have now. I need to remind everyone in the village who I am." The old woman's eyes gleamed, and a slow, eerie smile spread across her face. "Ah, power," she said softly. "It comes at a price, you know." "I don't care," Ifeoma said, her voice trembling with desperation. "Whatever it takes." Nwanyi chuckled, a sound that sent chills down Ifeoma's spine. "Very well, but be warned, child. Power given through dark means often takes more than it gives. Are you willing to pay that price?" Ifeoma hesitated, her heart pounding, but the memory of Nena's words, the humiliation in the marketplace, spurred her on. She couldn't let Nena win. She couldn't let her challenge go unanswered. "I am," Ifeoma said, her voice firmer now. "Just tell me what I have to do." The witch's smile widened, and she beckoned Ifeoma inside. The hut was small and cluttered, filled with strange objects, jars of herbs, animal bones, and things Ifeoma couldn't identify. A small fire burned in the hearth, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Nwanyi moved to a shelf and pulled down a small vial filled with a dark, swirling liquid. "This," she said, holding it out to Ifeoma, "will give you what you seek. But remember, power comes at a cost. You may not like the consequences." Ifeoma snatched the vial from the witch's hand without hesitation. "I'll worry about the consequences later." Nwanyi's eyes gleamed with something dark and knowing as she watched Ifeoma turn and leave the hut. As the door closed behind her, the old woman muttered under her breath, "You'll regret those words, child. You always do." Back in the village, Nena sat quietly by the fire outside her mother's hut, her thoughts swirling. She had won a small victory today, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Ifeoma wouldn't let it go so easily. Something was coming. She could feel it. As the night deepened and the stars appeared in the sky, Nena glanced toward the forest, where the shadows seemed to whisper with secrets and dangers unseen. The air felt heavy with anticipation, and Nena knew that whatever was coming, she would need to be ready. The night after her visit to the witch, Ifeoma felt something different within her, a pulse of power thrumming beneath her skin. It was subtle at first, a flicker of energy that made her heart race, her senses sharper. When she returned to the village, the familiar looks of admiration and envy from the other women seemed brighter, more focused. The men's gazes lingered longer, more transfixed by her every movement. She smiled to herself, feeling the magic working already. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. Ifeoma wanted more. She wanted Nena humiliated, destroyed for daring to stand up to her, for questioning her power and worth. As she lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling of her hut, she replayed the scene at the marketplace in her mind. Nena's defiance burning like an insult she couldn't let go. Her fingers traced the vial that still rested in her pocket, the last remnants of the witch's dark potion. She had been warned that power came with consequences, but she didn't care. Whatever it took to maintain her dominance, she would do it. The next morning, the air in the village felt charged, thick with anticipation for the Nkwa festival. Women were preparing their finest clothes, men were sharpening their drums, and children were practicing their dances. The festival was only days away, and the village was buzzing with excitement. But there was also something else, something unspoken yet felt by everyone, an undercurrent of unease that no one could quite explain. Nena felt it too. As she walked through the village that morning, her head held high despite the usual whispers and stares, she sensed a tension in the air that made her skin prickle. It wasn't just the festival. It was as if the village itself was waiting for something dark and inevitable. She tried to shake the feeling, focusing on her tasks for the day, but it clung to her like a shadow. As Nena passed by the marketplace, she noticed Ifeoma standing near a group of women, her usual entourage gathered around her. But there was something different about Ifeoma today, something unsettling. Her beauty seemed sharper, more intense, almost unnatural. The light seemed to catch her in a way that made her skin glow, her eyes glint like fire. The other women stared at her with a mixture of admiration and unease, and Nena felt a chill run down her spine. Before Nena could turn away, Ifeoma's eyes locked onto hers, and the corner of her mouth lifted in a small, mocking smile. "Well, look who it is," Ifeoma called out, her voice carrying over the crowd. "Our little rebel, the one who thinks she's so much more than the rest of us." The women around Ifeoma tittered nervously, sensing the tension between them. Nena's pulse quickened, but she refused to be cowed. She squared her shoulders and met Ifeoma's gaze evenly. "I don't need to think I'm more," Nena replied calmly. "I just don't measure myself by the same shallow standards you do." A ripple of shock went through the crowd. No one spoke to Ifeoma like that, especially not in public. For a moment, Ifeoma's smile faltered, her eyes narrowing with barely concealed rage. The power inside her flared, hot and wild, and for a moment, Nena thought she saw something flicker in Ifeoma's gaze, something dark and unnatural, like the reflection of a fire in her pupils. But then Ifeoma's smile returned, colder this time. "You're right, Nena. You don't measure up at all. But maybe you should be careful how loudly you boast. Sometimes those who claim they don't care about beauty are simply jealous of those who have it." With that, Ifeoma turned on her heel and walked away, her entourage trailing after her like shadows. The women in the marketplace exchanged uneasy glances, whispering among themselves as Ifeoma's figure disappeared into the distance. Nena stood there for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. She hadn't backed down, but something about Ifeoma felt wrong, more wrong than usual. There was a darkness in her now, something that had festered and grown since their last confrontation. As the day wore on, that darkness seemed to spread. By evening, strange things began to happen in the village. At first, it was little things, small misfortunes that could have been coincidence. A woman's pot cracked suddenly over the fire, spilling its contents into the flames. A child tripped and fell while running, scraping her knees on the sharp stones. But then the incidents became more frequent, more unsettling. A man's crops withered overnight, despite being healthy just the day before. A group of hunters returned from the forest empty-handed, reporting that the animals had vanished, leaving the woods eerily silent. Even the air felt different, heavier, as if the village was sitting beneath a storm that had yet to break. Nena watched it all with growing unease. She couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't a coincidence, that something deeper was at work here. The words of the goddess Ani echoed in her mind. "There will be trials ahead, but you have the strength to face them." But what did that mean? Was this one of those trials? She didn't have to wonder for long. Late that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned a deep, bruised purple, Ifeoma appeared at Nena's doorstep. She stood in the fading light, her figure wrapped in shadow, her eyes gleaming with a strange, unnatural light. Nena felt a shiver of dread run down her spine. She stepped out of her hut, her heart pounding, but she kept her voice steady. "What do you want, Ifeoma?" Ifeoma's smile was sharp and cruel. "I came to see how long you plan on pretending that you're more than you are, Nena. You speak so highly of yourself, but what have you really done? You're nothing but an outsider in this village. You don't belong." Nena clenched her fists at her sides, but she didn't respond. Ifeoma took a step closer, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper. "You think you're special just because you defied me in front of the others? Because you think you don't need what the rest of us have?" She leaned in, her breath hot on Nena's face. "You'll see how wrong you are." Before Nena could react, Ifeoma's hand shot out, grabbing her by the wrist. The moment their skin touched, Nena felt a jolt of icy cold run through her veins. The darkness in Ifeoma seemed to pulse and writhe, spreading into Nena's skin like a poison. Her vision blurred, her body trembling as the power surged through her, seeping into her bones. For a moment, Nena felt her strength drain away, like the very life was being sucked out of her. She gasped, trying to pull her hand free, but Ifeoma's grip was iron tight, her eyes glowing with malevolent satisfaction. "You don't know what you're up against, Nena," Ifeoma hissed. "You think you can challenge me? You think you can survive in this village without my permission?" Nena's breath came in ragged gasps as the coldness spread through her, but then, from somewhere deep inside, she felt a warmth, a flicker of the power Annie had spoken of. It was faint, barely a spark, but it was enough. With a cry of defiance, Nena yanked her hand free from Ifeoma's grasp, stumbling back, her chest heaving. The icy coldness began to fade, replaced by a warmth that spread through her limbs, reigniting her strength. She stood tall, her eyes blazing with determination. "I don't need your permission," Nena said, her voice steady now. "I don't need your approval or your power. I know who I am, and that's more than enough." Ifeoma's face twisted in rage, her eyes narrowing to slits. The darkness inside her flared, crackling with the dark magic she had taken from the witch. But something had shifted in Nena now. She could feel Ani's strength flowing through her, steady and unbreakable. With a growl of frustration, Ifeoma turned and stormed away into the night, leaving Nena standing alone, her heart still racing. The village around her was quiet, but Nena knew that the danger hadn't passed. Ifeoma's jealousy and rage had been fed by something dark and dangerous, and she wasn't finished yet. The next morning, the village was in a state of panic. More crops had withered overnight, the wells had begun to dry up, and the air itself felt thick and oppressive. The villagers whispered among themselves, their eyes darting nervously to the sky, to the forest, and to each other. Nena watched from the edge of the marketplace as the people gathered, their fear growing with each passing hour. She knew this wasn't a natural disaster. This was Ifeoma's doing, the price of the dark magic she had taken from the witch. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows over the village, Nena felt a sense of urgency building within her. She couldn't let this continue. Ifeoma's power was spiraling out of control, and the village was paying the price. She had to stop her. Taking a deep breath, Nena set off toward the forest, her mind racing. She didn't know exactly what she would do, but she knew she couldn't let Ifeoma's jealousy destroy everything. Whatever power Ani had given her, whatever strength she had found within herself, she would need it now. The path ahead was uncertain, but Nena's resolve was unshakable. The village might not see her strength yet, but soon they would. And so would Ifeoma. The path to the witch's hut wound deeper into the forest, twisting through trees so thick they blocked out the sunlight. As Nena made her way, her mind raced with the weight of what lay ahead. Ifeoma's jealousy and the dark magic she had summoned were poisoning not just the village, but the land itself. Crops withered, wells dried up, and the people were growing desperate. Nena knew she had to stop Ifeoma before everything crumbled, but as she walked, doubt began to creep into her heart. Would her inner strength, the power Ani had spoken of, be enough? Ifeoma had used magic, dark, dangerous magic, and Nena had no idea how to counter it. The memory of Ani's voice echoed in her mind. True power does not need to be seen to be real. Nena drew in a steadying breath and pressed on. Whatever power she had, she would have to trust it. By the time she reached the witch's hut, the sun had nearly set, casting long shadows across the clearing. Nena hesitated at the edge of the trees, her heart pounding as she watched Ifeoma step out of the hut, her eyes burning with fury. "I knew you'd come," Ifeoma said, her voice sharp as the wind. She smiled, but it was a twisted, cruel smile, her beauty now tainted by the dark magic she had consumed. Her skin seemed to shimmer with an unnatural light, her eyes reflecting the same eerie glow Nena had seen the day before. "I knew you would come," Ifeoma said in a dark, evil voice. "But you're too late." Nena stepped forward, her fear mixing with determination. "Ifeoma, stop this," she said, her voice calm but firm. "The magic you've taken isn't just hurting me. It's destroying the village. It's hurting everyone." Ifeoma laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that echoed through the clearing. "Hurt? They deserve it. After all the years they worshipped me, they deserve to see what real power looks like." "This isn't power, Ifeoma," Nena replied. "This is fear. You're afraid that without your beauty, without people's admiration, you'll have nothing. But there's more to life than how people see you." For a moment, Ifeoma's eyes flickered with uncertainty, but then the darkness surged again, twisting her features into a mask of rage. "You think you know better than me? You, with your plain face and your skinny body? You think the village will look to you for guidance? You'll never be more than the outcast." Nena's chest tightened, but she refused to let Ifeoma's words sink in. She stepped closer, keeping her voice steady. I'm not trying to take anything from you. I don't care about being admired. I care about the village, about the people who are suffering because of this magic. Please, Ifeoma, let it go." Ifeoma's laughter stopped abruptly, her smile fading as her face twisted into something far more dangerous. "You don't understand, do you?" she whispered. "I can't let it go. The power, it's too strong." Her hands trembled as she raised them, and Nena could see the darkness swirling in her eyes, a deep, consuming magic that seemed to be eating away at her very soul. The price of the witch's potion was becoming clear. It was turning Ifeoma into something monstrous, something inhuman. "I can help you," Nena said, her voice gentle but urgent. "We can fix this, but you have to stop using the magic." Ifeoma shook her head, her eyes wild with fear and anger. "No, I won't let you win." With a sudden, violent motion, Ifeoma raised her arms, and a blast of dark energy surged toward Nena, knocking her off her feet and sending her crashing to the ground. For a moment the world spun around her, but then, through the haze of pain, Nena felt something stir deep inside her, a warmth, a light that seemed to push back against the darkness. It was the power Annie had spoken of, the strength that had always been inside her, waiting for this moment. Slowly, Nena rose to her feet, her eyes locking onto Ifeoma's. "This isn't who you are, Ifeoma," she said softly, her voice filled with compassion. "The magic is consuming you. It's not too late to stop." Ifeoma hesitated, her hands shaking as the dark energy pulsed around her. For a brief moment, Nena saw the real Ifeoma, the proud, beautiful woman who had ruled the village with confidence and charm, but that woman was fading, being swallowed by the darkness she had summoned. "No!" Ifeoma screamed, and the dark energy surged again, crackling through the air, ready to strike Nena down. But this time, Nena didn't flinch. She closed her eyes and focused on the warmth inside her, the power of self-worth that Ani had given her. It wasn't about magic or beauty or strength. It was about knowing who she was, about standing firm in her own identity. And that was something Ifeoma's dark magic couldn't take from her. When Nena opened her eyes, a soft, golden light surrounded her, pushing back the darkness. The blast of energy that Ifeoma had sent toward her dissolved in the light, disappearing like mist in the sun. Ifeoma staggered back, her eyes wide with shock. What? What are you?" "I'm someone who knows her worth," Nena said quietly, the golden light still glowing around her. "And you can be that too, Ifeoma. It's not too late." Ifeoma's face crumpled, her hands falling to her sides as the dark energy began to wane. She took a step back, then another, her expression filled with confusion and fear. I just wanted them to see me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They already did," Nena replied gently. "But it's not about what they see. It's about how you see yourself. You don't need this magic, Ifeoma. Let it go." For a long, tense moment, Ifeoma stood there, her body shaking as the last of the dark magic flickered around her. Then, with a sob, she collapsed to her knees, the darkness retreating from her, leaving her pale and trembling. Nena knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's over," she said softly. "You don't have to fight anymore." Ifeoma looked up at her, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice broken. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." Nena nodded, her heart aching for the woman before her. Ifeoma had been driven by fear, by a need for validation that had spiraled out of control. But now, she had a chance to heal, to find her true self again. The next morning, the village woke to clear skies and a fresh breeze. The strange misfortunes of the past few days seemed to vanish overnight. The crops that had withered began to show signs of life, and the wells, once dry, now brimmed with water again. The villagers, still cautious, slowly returned to their daily routines, though whispers of what had happened spread through the streets. Ifeoma, humbled and shaken, kept to herself in the days that followed. Her beauty, though still present, no longer held the same power over the village. She avoided the gazes of those who once admired her, unsure of how to rebuild her place in the world without the magic she had relied on for so long. But Nena was there, quietly watching, offering support in small, subtle ways. She didn't need grand gestures or public admiration. She had found something far more important: her own sense of worth. As the days passed, the villagers began to see Nena in a new light. They no longer whispered behind her back or looked at her with pity. They saw her strength, her quiet confidence, and they began to respect her for it. The Ankwa festival came and went, but this time, Nena didn't shy away. She stood among the other women, not as an outsider, but as someone who had found her place, not in the shadows of others, but in the light of her own identity. And as the drums beat and the fires blazed, Nena smiled to herself, knowing that the power Ani had given her, the power of knowing who she was more than enough. In the months that followed, Ifeoma began to change. She no longer sought the attention and admiration that had once defined her. Instead, she focused on rebuilding herself, quietly helping others in the village, learning to find value in things beyond physical beauty. Nena, too, continued to grow. Her connection to Ani and the inner strength she had discovered became a guiding light, not just for herself, but for those around her. People came to her for advice, for wisdom, and for comfort in times of need. And though the village still valued beauty, it had learned a new lesson: that true power, true strength, came from within. Nena had found hers, and in time, so had Ifeoma. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel Folktales King so that you won't miss any of our new videos. Here is another story I'm sure you will enjoy. Click on it to watch now.